Alex Rogers, 18th of July 2022, first recording, word list. 1. Pit. 2. Pet. 3. Pat. 4. Hat. 5. Pot. 6. Put. 7. Put. 8. Say. 9. Sigh. 10. Sight. 11. Stir. 12. Steer. 13. Stairs. 14. Sand. 15. Pan. 16. Man. 17. Male. 18. Cow. 19. Brow. 20. Bow. 21. Fill. 22. Fell. 23. Fall. 24. Full. 25. Full. 26. Fail. 27. Full. 28. Fine. 29. Foul. 30. Foil. 31. File. 32. Pie. 33. Kite. 34. Height. 35. Bed. 36. Board. 37. Barred. 38. Board. 39. Borrowing. 40. Burrowing. 41. Late. 42. Gate. 43. Later. 44. Paper. 45. Paint. 46. Can. 47. Plant. 48. Master. 49. Afterwards. 50. Made. 51. Made. 52. Frayed. 53. Father. 54. Father. 55. Breathe. 56. Breath. 57. Booth. 58. Behold. 59. Healthy. 60. Hour. 61. Vehicle. 62. Uncle. 63. Candle. 64. Table. 65. Weight. 66. Weight. 67. Side. 68. Side. 68. Agreed. 70. Greed. 71. Brood. 72. Brood. 73. Thirst. 74. First. 75. Fur. 76. For. 77. Fold. 78. Cold. 79. Cot. 80. Caught. 81. Little. 82. Letter. 83. Meat. 84. Meat. 85. Mate. 86. Naught. 87. Not. 88. Doll. 89. Dole. 90. Battle. 91. Cattle. 92. Start. 93. Butter. 94. Water. 95. House. 96. Horse. 97. Horse. 98. Taste. 99. Shade. 100. Lemonade. 101. Short. 102. Sport. 103. Photograph. 104. Important. 105. Thin. 106. Think. 107. Hearth. 108. Mouth. 109. Pout. 110. Sound. 111. Pound. 112. Round. 113. Slouch. 114. Cloth. 115. Clothes. 116. There. 117. Feather. 118. Either. 119. Heaving. 120. Leaving. 121. Earth. 122. Birth. 123. More. 124. More. 125. For. 126. Pearl. 127. Peril. 128. Ball. 130. Girl. 131. Whistling. 132. Shopping. 133. Singing. 134. Swimming. 135. Badminton. 136. Hopping. 137. Hoping. 138. Hold. 139. Held. 140. Honour. 141. Annihilate. Alex Rogers, 18th of July 2022, second recording, Cinderella. Once upon a time there was a girl called Cinderella, but everyone called her Cinders. Cinders lived with her mother and two stepsisters called Lily and Rosa. Lily and Rosa were very unfriendly and they were lazy girls. They spent all their time buying new clothes and going to parties. Poor Cinders had to wear all their old hand-me-downs, and she had to do the cleaning. One day, a royal messenger came to announce a ball. The ball would be held at the royal palace in honour of the Queen's only son, Prince William. Lily and Rosa thought this was divine. Prince William was gorgeous and he was looking for a bride. They dreamed of wedding bells. When the evening of the ball arrived, Cinders had to help her sisters get ready. They were in a bad mood. They'd wanted to buy some new gowns, but their mother said that they had enough gowns, so they started shouting at Cinders. "Find my jewels," yelled one. "Find my hat," howled the other. They wanted hairbrushes, hairpins, and hairspray.
Recording 3, Anecdote with Alex Rogers. So, Alex, over to you.
This is one of the unintended highlights of my amateur acting career in heavily inverted commas. In 2008, I was doing a play called Blue Room, which is a David Hare adaptation of a play called La Ronde by, I want to say Arthur, I want to say Schnitzler, I might be completely wrong about that. But anyway, an adaptation of a play called La Ronde. And it is a play in 10 scenes, each of which has a male character and a female character, and each scene is constructed around the build up to those two characters going to bed and then the aftermath. So it's a complete daisy chain in that one character changes from one scene to the next, i.e. scene one is, get this right, the prostitute and the cab driver, and then scene two changes from the cab driver to the model. The next scene changes from the model to the student. So it daisy chains round, and scene 10 links back up with the character that you left behind in scene 1. And it's normally done by the actor playing 5 different male parts and the actress playing 5 different female parts. So it's I think it's more of an actor's piece than any kind of profound masterpiece or anything like that, but it's a fun piece to do. And it was the play that Nicole Kidman caused a bit of a stir in when she did it in London about 25 years ago, because she got a kid off in that, and her male co-star turned what was described as an adroit cartwheel, stark naked. So it was a fun piece to do. It had a bit of history behind it, and it was the play that led a theatre critic to describe it as pure theatrical Viagra. So it was fun to do, and one of the kind of funny sort of technical bits and pieces that you end up looking at is the different types of underwear that all the male characters need to wear, because obviously there's some degree of kind of need to be roughly credible with the characters, but also some opportunity for some comedy. Anyway, one of the characters is the male characters is a playwright, and there's some indication that he's a little bit kinky, and he can only get it up in the dark. So this character seemed an absolute dead cert for wearing thongs in his two scenes. So in his first scene, he appeared in a leopard print thong, and we hadn't quite kind of broached the question of whether I'd appear fully naked at one point or anything. And when we got sort of close to dress rehearsals, the director said, "No, I think not. I think it's too distracting, and it's going to kind of pull focus away from the play entirely, and it's just someone's naked on stage." So the solution to this was, after the scene where the playwright has gone to bed with the actress, they're on the sofa, and the lights go down just as about starting sex, and then short blackout, and then the lights come back up, and we assume this is the aftermath. So the director, John, said, "Look, blackout, take the thong off, leave it on the floor, lights come up for the start of the second half of the scene, just stand up, pick it up, put it on, get on with the scene, then it's kind of realistic without making a kind of massive bugger's muddle about it." So this was fine, all through rehearsals, dress rehearsal fine. Anyway, first night, I bent down, pulled the thong up, and had to walk round the sofa that Catherine, the actress playing the actress, was lying on, to pick up a candelabra and get on with the scene. And what I hadn't realised was that, or what I felt immediately, was when I pulled it up, it felt tight. It didn't feel like it was fitting properly. And what I realised I'd done was that I just kind of got twisted. So I had to kind of stop for time and mutter something as I was kind of pootling around trying to pull this thing up past my kneecaps, and said, "Oh, that's the wrong way round," which got a nice laugh, and I got it back on, we got on the scene. And afterwards, the director said, we've got to keep that in. So every performance from then on, we take the thong off, turn it round a little bit, pull it up, waddle round, make it look like something that wasn't supposed to happen, throw in what's supposed to look like a spontaneous ad-lib, get a laugh, and move on. This was fine until the penultimate performance, when everything went fine until I went to put the thong on properly, and I'd obviously got a little bit demorp happy about it because I hadn't checked that I had done it properly. So I'm now coming back round the other side of the sofa with the candelabra, which stage management never fixed the candles in it, so it's got 3 candles, all of which are wobbling. And as I came back round past the arm of the sofa into full view of the audience, I realised that they were laughing for longer than they would normally laugh. And it gradually dawned on me that what I'd managed to do, rather than put it on properly, was to turn it through 90 degrees. So the bit that should have been straight down the front was on my right hip, and the little bit of fabric that would normally have been on my left hip was straight down the front. And this is compounded by the fact that both my parents were in the audience that night. The cast of another play I was doing at the same time had also come to see that night, and also the fact that this theatre has a raised stage, as in the entire audience are looking up at you, which provided a particularly kind of hideous worm's eye view of the whole thing. So having realised this, being stuck with 2 pages of dialogue, a candelabra with 3 unfixed lit candles in it, I thought, well, I'm just going to have to brazen this out and kind of plough on with it. But I wasn't quite ready for. There were 2 girls sat in the front row directly in front of me. And this is a theatre that only seats 180, 200 people. Sat right in front of me. You know, they could have stood up and pretty much kind of touched the offending apparatus. And one of them turned to the other and said, "Why doesn't he flick it back in?" Which didn't seem to me a particularly kind of credible strategy at that point. So we did the rest of the scene with everything on display, and because of the nature of the play, you have to change costume after every scene, but you almost always have to do it separately. In other words, the 2 of you don't really see each other backstage because you're at either side changing outfits and rushing back onto the next scene. So Catherine, from where she was on the sofa, couldn't see what was actually going on. So it was only after we'd come off stage after the curtain call that she said, why were they laughing so much in scene 7? I said, my cock and my balls were hanging out.
Thank you for sharing that. Oral history, recording 4 with Alex Rogers. So, Alex, could you tell me a bit about your background?
I was born in Windsor in 1983, but I was only born in Windsor by virtue of the fact that 6 weeks before I was due to be born, I got myself turned upside down with my feet stuck in my ears. So I had to be I was delivered by a cesarean section rather than natural birth. So my mum was able to choose the date and also the day of the week, being a Saturday, which meant my father didn't have to take the day off work. So I was born in Windsor, but then grew up in Marlow, just outside Hoboken. And I lived there until I was 4, when my parents divorced and Mum and I moved down into Marlow itself in the High Street. We lived there until I was 7 or 8, I think, and I was at a local primary school called Herries, which is halfway up the hill just on the way out of Marlow. And then bit by bit we moved up from down in Berkshire towards Oxfordshire and the Cotswolds, and lived with my mum's parents for a little bit of time on the way up to the Cotswolds. And then we lived with friends of my mum's in a lovely house called the Old Stables, which is just outside Henley. And then bit by bit my mum got her parents moved up to Milton and Wychwood in the Cotswolds. And then Mum and I moved into a cottage in Shipton under Wychwood, which was 2 or 3 miles from her parents and 5 or 6 miles from the very eccentric prep school that I was at. And then we lived there until I would have been 15, I think. Then we moved into the house of my mum's then fiance, which is just outside Whitney, which is not far from where we're sat right now. And we were there for a few years, and then moved to a cottage called Rose Cottage in Church Westcott, which is halfway between Burford and Stow-on-the-Wold. And by that time,
So, could you tell me a bit about this eccentric prep school? What was eccentric about it?
everything. It's called Brun Abbey, and it was in an old, I think Cistercian abbey, but I might be wrong about that, but an old abbey at any rate. And it was set up by an American lawyer called Sterling Stover, who had, as you do, a vision of running what he'd have characterised as a quintessential English prep school. I think most people would gloss eccentric for quintessential there. It was brilliant, but balmy. So the trademark uniform was the bright yellow jumper, no tie, just a bright yellow jumper. And it was a very small school. So when my third year there were 46 boys in the school, which was the biggest it ever was. The year I left, I was one of 13 kids in the whole school, so it really was very, very tiny. But it was, I'm not quite sure how Sterling would have described his day to day vision of it, but it was, I suppose, a little bit like Bedales is now, but to the power of 10. So we called teachers by their first names. We had formal dinners every Thursday night when we had a glass of wine from the age of, I mean, literally 8 onwards. I was there 7 to 12, but only by virtue of the fact I was slightly younger for my year, but essentially 8 to 13. We said grace in Latin. We had ghost walks in the woods, midnight swims in, there's a lovely outdoor pool. The head teacher would wake us up by playing classical music through the speakers in the dormitories, alternated some some mornings with meatloaf, and it was great, but brilliant, and very, very atypical, I guess, of anywhere else. But there was definitely a sense of encouraging kids to kind of express themselves and be treated as young adults, even if we were, little more than kind of primary school kids, or literally primary school kids for the first few years. So that was wonderful, but very, very bizarre. And I think it began as an idea of catering for, in a sort of embryonic way, it was looking at providing prep school education for kids who had dyslexia was the main one. And I think when I was there, that was the label was probably used as a little bit of a kind of, God forgive me, kind of middle class sop. It's gone on to become much more of a kind of special needs specialism school. So that was my prep school, and then I went from there to Stowe out in Buckingham, which I suppose there's some very kind of superficial similarities with my prep school, but it's much more orthodox private school. So Mum and I were living in Church Westcott then, and we stayed there until, I think Mum must have moved out of there in about 2014, something like that, when she married. She'd married for a second time. That went the wrong kind of direction. They divorced a couple of years after getting married, so my mum moved to a rented house out in a village called Compton Abdale, which is halfway between Burford and Cheltenham, I guess, and then moved to Witchford, which is where she is now, which is just over the Warwickshire border from Chipping Norton. And at that time, I'd moved to London for a little bit when I was at drama school, and then moved back to Whitney. I say moved back to Whitney, moved to Whitney, in the flat we're sat in right now.
So, how did you find drama school?
Mixed, I think. I basically really enjoyed it, and there are lots of things that I really benefited from having been there that I didn't necessarily realise at the time, and I've only kind of realised subsequently. But I think it was essentially a kind of an experience of two halves, in that I really enjoyed the first year and enjoyed the second year. The second year far less. I think I'd got slightly fed up with some of the methods and ideologies that I think underpinned the place, and I felt in the first year they were mostly interested in what people could do, and in the second year slightly fixated on what people couldn't do, which I thought was probably the wrong way around. And I was also being arsy about it, because I think I'd sort of set my stall out in the first year and thought, this is what I want from it, this is what I think I can do, and I'd enjoyed doing that in the first year. But then the second year, I think there was a sort of paralysis by analysis, if you like, and there's a limit to how much kind of historical dancing and tap classes that I was really wanting to kind of wake up in the morning and look forward to. So
So, what did you do after drama school?
I well, I moved back. I moved into the flat we're in right now, so I moved straight back from London. Literally the day that we finished, which again probably tells you something about how I felt about kind of continuing with the profession. I'd always thought that the profession would probably drive me mad kind of temperamentally, so I wasn't particularly surprised at that. And I got an agent quite late in the day in my second year, and I was sort of ready to say, sod it. I've enjoyed the time, but there's a there's a very narrow kind of range of acting work that I'd have wanted to do, and the thought of being away on tour or anything like that would just have driven me mad. So I was a little bit the agent was a little bit of a kind of a late development and surprise. But before I went there, completely accidentally I'd started supply teaching for a cover supervisor agency, and I'd enjoyed doing that, at least when I sort of became vaguely competent at it. So I went back to doing that immediately after I graduated in 2012, and that then took me actually quite quickly now I think about it, but actually going back to that in the autumn of 2012 took me to the Oxford Academy, where I worked as temporary agency staff for a little while, but then ended up the following summer I ended up teaching drama there full time because they had a drama teacher that had gone mad and was in the slow process of leaving or being asked to leave. So I did that for the summer term full time and had fun doing it. The head of department asked if I wanted to kind of stay and do it properly, quote unquote, and I wasn't quite ready at that point to sort of ditch acting entirely, even though I probably knew I'd end up doing exactly that. So I said no at that point, but then fast forward to the next September 2013, an English teacher again sort of disappeared under something of a cloud. So the phone rang again. I said, "Do you want to come back and teach English?" Which is my degree subject, so then I had a kind of background in both subjects. So I did that, and then the same conversation came around again, as in, do you want to stay and do this properly? And that time I was sort of ready to do it. So after a slightly kind of protracted period of negotiation about pay and all the rest of it, I ended up doing that full time. I was there for, what was I there for? 9 years, and then I left last July, so just over a year ago.
Okay, thank you very much for telling me all about that. Thanks very much.